Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 313 of CryptoBiography, and it is part 20 of The Brick Wall. And here we go. Unlike Carson, the Boilermaker had a corner man who handed him water and checked him for injuries. Carson reached down and took the water pitcher and took a swallow and then poured some over his head to cool down. He put the pitcher back carefully so he wouldn't be left waterless in the next round break. He spat out a laugh. He had a thought. Despite the difficulty of fighting the world champ, he wished he could drag out the fight past the planned 12 rounds. He still had no clear idea of what to do after it had decided the bet. He took some deep breaths and the bell rang. He bounced off the stool, smiling. Jeffries looked askance at him, wondering why his opponent was showing glee. He clearly wanted to wipe the smile off Carson's face. He came in hard with a series of punches that didn't land cleanly but caused the crowd to scream. It didn't wipe the smile off Carson's face entirely, but his face did slip into a smirk. If he needed to think of his early opponents as representing the disease that took his family, this was quite different. Jim Jeffries was his entertainment. This was going to be the most fun he'd ever had. He started to take some real chances, waving his head around like a snake, daring the Boilermaker to hit him on the chin, putting his gloves behind his head as though he was about to lie down in a hammock, then stepping backwards as Jeffries charged. Then he started to hit back. He could tell his punches were landing with gusto. He kept fighting, almost laughing. Jeffries hit back, but it couldn't stop him from this strange joy. But by the end of the round, that strange emotion had run its course. The bell rang and he returned to his corner. He put water over his head and waited for the bell. Jeffries had done nothing to him in the second round. The bell rang and he stood up. This time he did not bounce, he did not rush. He walked forward, almost casually, waiting for Jeffries to make his move. He put up his gloves at the last moment and Jeffries started swinging. Carson realized something. He was ducking blows almost automatically, and in a flash he saw. He needed an answer for his next step in life. But he had seen no one of note before the fight, and he had no doubt that Jeffries would be whisked away after the fight, and that Carson, after perhaps a handshake, would not see or talk to him after that. And so, an idea. He did a couple of combinations, then suddenly clinched Jeffries. He didn't waste time. Before the referee could decide to break them up, he asked in his opponent's ear, "Can you get me away from my current gym?" They got broken up, and as he backed away, the Boilermaker gave Carson a strange look. He clearly had heard and understood what Carson had asked him. He postured, waving his gloves vaguely at Carson. Carson figured he was thinking about what he said and did not attack. The crowd started to get restless, and Jeffries noticed. He launched another attack at Carson. Carson hit back and even tagged him on the ear. Jeffries clinched Carson and said in his ear, "No, I would if I could, but I can't." "Okay," Carson said, and they broke up the clinch. There's nothing to do now but fight. Carson started going for it. There was nothing left but to go for it. The third round ended, and he sat back in his corner and poured more water. This time, when the bell rang, he got up, and he was angry. Not the artificial anger he made for his earlier fights, and not even anger at Jim Jeffries, who clearly was in some sort of cage, just as he was. Not even anger at himself for getting into the situation. Not quite. It was just anger at everything, at the frustration he felt for his situation, at his inability to make a better life for Lydia, for the child they would have together soon. He always threw hard punches, but now, though he was angry, he was also focused. He was putting his full weight behind them, and the Boilermaker was having a hard time holding him off. He was throwing good jabs and following up with hooks that he turned his body weight into, making them thud into Jeffries' side. His opponent was starting to back off, and Carson followed. But Jeffries wasn't the champion for nothing. He found his footing and hit back. Carson felt several blows thud along his side and up his arms, blows that he knew would leave bruises by tomorrow. The crowd was eating it up, first at seeing the underdog doing well, then at the favorite champion fighting back. Carson's ears were ringing when the bell rang in the fourth. The fifth started, and both fighters were tired from the exertions of the fourth. It started slow, with simple pokes and jabs for the most part, mixed with a few feints and clinches. The crowd started to turn, but by then both fighters were ramping up their efforts again to try to sway the judges. Carson knew he would have to win decisively to have any chance with the judges. He went at Jeffries, throwing several hard jabs to force his defenses up, stepping around the counter, then giving him several hard punches, 2 of which hit him in the face, on the man's left cheekbone. Jeffries was too tough for that to be enough, and swung back at Carson. He ducked enough to make the blow slide off his skull, then, while he was down, threw several punches to the gut while he moved to his left to keep from being too easy a target. Jeffries still managed to pop him on the air as he straightened back up. It hurt, but didn't daze him. He threw a few hard straights, but didn't get past Jeffries' defenses. The bell rang soon after, and they went to their corners. The next few rounds went by. The 6th, 7th, and 8th all had some hard shots by both men, but no real ground was gained by either boxer. It was in the 9th that Carson found his moment. The round was almost halfway through when he popped the Boilermaker's defenses aside with a hard right. Then, when he overcompensated, brought his left around with a massive hook to the jaw that landed with a smack that Carson heard the echo of a moment later. Jeffrey stumbled back. The crowd gasped, went silent. Then, as Carson moved forward, roared. He threw a few more punches, and Jeffries turtled, keeping his defenses very close to his face and chest. Carson threw some body hooks around the defenses, but couldn't land something that would finish things out. He spent a good amount of time trying, though. When he did manage to hit one hard on the side of the skull, Jeffries clinched. The referee did break it up, but shortly after did so, the bell rang. Still, when the next bell rang to start the 10th, Carson could tell. Jeffries was close to going down. He wasn't teetering in a way that might have been obvious to the crowd or even to the ref, but Carson could tell. He was placing his feet too carefully, and they were a little too flat. Carson was tired, but not as much. He still had a bit of bounce in his step. He bobbed forward, baited out a punch, then slipped in and hit Jeffries hard on the chin. Jeffries tried to cover, but Carson was on him, hitting again and again. Jeffries went down, and Carson went to the neutral corner. The referee was counting, but Jeffries was tough as a bull. He was getting back up. And that's the end of this, the story for this episode. Obviously, we have a little bit more to go in the big fight, and then, of course, what's going to happen after. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, or Mastodon. And thanks for listening. Words and music copyright 2023, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.